So Jesus is going to send his twin, the Holy Spirit, who's going to live inside of us, and now he's going to be the one who's communicating with us. So it's not Jesus. I think Jesus still talks to us, but it's kind of cool that he said, okay, but I'm going to send something to be with you and to be in you. Now, how many of y'all remember going to the drive-in back in the day when you had to hang the little clunky thing? You felt like you were the Flintstones and was going to pull your car over, and you always hoped you'd get one that actually had wires and all that other stuff. But what do we do now? We are tech savvy. What do we do now? We go in and we tune our radio. That way our battery dies while we sit at the movie, and we have to have the guy come jump it. But now we don't just have the thing hanging, we don't have the thing hanging on anymore, but we actually have the capacity to hear from God from within us. God is so far away, I just can't hear him. Okay, take your finger. How far away is God? He is within us. He is closer to us than our very breath. But it goes on, and in 14 verse 26 it says, "But the advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things, and will remind you of everything I have said to you." Now, I understand that sometimes we teach by showing. Sometimes we teach by watching somebody else, and we, But most of the time, when we teach, we give instruction. How do you give instruction? Usually, it is with speaking, right? So again, he's the shepherd. We hear his voice. He must be speaking. Now the Holy Spirit is going to teach us, and he's going to remind us of everything that's happened so far, of all the goodness of God. So how do you remind people? I love that bumper sticker. Wives, if your husband said he'd get to it, he will. There's no sense in reminding him every 3 months. Okay, we're going to get to it. It's on the list, I promise. I've just lost the list. So he's not only teaching us, but he's reminding us, again, which says to me, he must be doing some speaking. It seems logical. The Holy Spirit is speaking to us today. So now I want us to look at the second chapter of Acts. What's happened at the second chapter of Acts? Well, it's the day of Pentecost. This is the day that Jesus was talking about when the advocate's going to come and he's going to get inside you and you're going to thrive. You're not just going to survive, but you're going to thrive because literally I'm giving you a nuclear power plant that's going to live inside you. He's going to have everything I've got. He's going to have wisdom. He's going to have all the compassion I have. He's going to have all the holiness I have. And I'm going to put that ember inside of you. I went to turn on the lamps out here on our little coffee table out in the hallway. And I reached up the first one, I clicked the light, and it came on. The second one, I clicked the light, it didn't come on. And I was thinking, I've recently had to replace a light socket on a lamp that we have at the house. And I was really glad, that I had the technology to actually wire two wires together. But when I looked up in there, guess what? There's no bulb. Okay, it doesn't matter how much power you run to it. If there's no bulb, you're not going to get any light. We have a light put inside of us. The light is the Holy Spirit, and what a powerful bulb that is. So Acts chapter 2, verses 17 through 21 says, "In the last days," God says, "I will pour out my Spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams. Even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my Spirit in those days, and they will prophesy. I will show wonders in the heavens above and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and billows of smoke. The sun will be turned to darkness and the noon to blood before the coming of the great and glorious day of the Lord, and everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved." Sarah led that for us during worship. But this wasn't Peter coming up with something profound off of the top of his head. This was Peter repeating what he knew. Look, this is a new thing, so I need to attach this new thing to something old where everybody goes, "Oh, no, wait a minute. This isn't something Peter just came up with. This is something Joel said 1,000+ years earlier." We are seeing prophecy, 1,000-year-old prophecy come to be right now. Now, if that doesn't boost your faith in something, And Peter, under the direction of the Holy Spirit, he's and then the next thing he does, he goes back and he refers to something that Isaiah said, that all these good Jewish people knew these Old Testament promises, and now they're seeing them come to life. How powerful is that? And so it's an encouragement because, okay, if this was true on the day of Pentecost, is it still true today? Well, no, because, the day of Pentecost was a special day. And yes, it was a special day, but it was the beginning of a special era. And we are living in the church era. We're not out of the church era. You know how I know that? Because we're still having church here. When we go to having church at God's house, I'll know, okay, the church era is over. We're on to the next phase. But we're not. We're still in that church age, and I'm so glad that I get to be here and do church with you. Okay, the day of Pentecost. It is not just a possibility, but it is a promise that God is going to speak to us today. He will pour out His Spirit on all His people. Sons and daughters will prophesy. Young men will see visions. Old men will dream dreams. I couldn't remember that this morning when I was praying. I was, God, I don't know if it's the vision or the dream, but since I'm kind of in the middle of being young and old, I'll just take both. I'll take either. I'll take both. I'll take whatever you want to give me. Just give me that. And it's kind of cool because when I prayed that, I was praying that, I immediately got an image that I hadn't thought about in years, and that was about my grandmother, Mildred, my dad's mom. My dad is from Wisconsin Dells, Wisconsin, which is why I'm from South Florida. And my grandmother was Mildred. Most of my early life, I lived next door to my grandmother and called her Mom. And Mom Peasall was a typical Wisconsin lady. She was strong, healthy. She was a big woman. She did everything for herself. The funny story I'll take a minute and tell you. When I started teaching school last year, which I'm not this year, but last year, I realized I needed a watch because I hadn't had a watch in years because I used my cell phone like many of you. That is my watch now. So I went to Walmart on the way to school that first day. I ran in there. I'm looking for a cheap Timex. I look in the clearance, which is the only section I shop in anywhere, the clearance section, and there's a Timex watch. I think, oh man, this is awesome. It's $7. I get it. I take it. I'm putting it on as I'm driving, and then I look down and I go, this is a woman's watch. I just bought a woman's watch. Oh well, I guess I'll have to wear a woman's watch. So all day long, I'm thinking, hey kids, ask a teenager, does this look like a woman's watch to you? And they're all wearing, watches like this. And so it's like, yeah, I don't. So I get home and I said, Sally, I bought a woman's watch today. And I said, see, and she goes, Mike, that's a man's watch. No woman would be caught dead wearing that watch. And I said, my grandmother had a watch just like this. True story, right? So back to what I saw as I was praying, God, just give me a vision or dream, or I don't care. I just want you to speak to me. And immediately what I got was my grandmother, and when she would hold me, I wish I could remember the exact rhythm, but I remember that she would pat me with this strong pat, with this constant rhythm that never changed. Now, what is God saying to me through that? I love you. Man, I want you to crawl up in my lap, and I just want you to just let me pat you. Don't you want to tell me what I'm doing wrong? Nope. Don't you want to give me an assignment for the day? No. So you just want to spend time with me? Yep. And then right after that, Leah and Lily come out of the bedroom, and Leah's like, Dad, could you hold Lily long enough for me to get changed? And like, yeah. But she wouldn't, she's fighting. She didn't want to lean against Pappy because she knows that means going back to sleep. So she sat there and looked at me like this. So anyway, it didn't have as happiest ending as I'd like. But I heard from God. I sensed something from God, and it was huge. Okay, is it not just a possibility but a promise? Yes, it's a possibility, it's a promise. God spoke to Mary and spoke to shepherds through angelic visitation. God spoke to Joseph through a dream. God spoke to John through a vision. As a matter of fact, if you take all of the Bible and you take everything in the Bible, and you take everything in the Bible that came to be written through either a dream or a vision, how much of the Bible have you've just circled a lot of the Bible? 1/3. Thank you. The person who does all my proofreading right there. If you ever get anything from me and it's like really botched up and there are no commas, it's because Sally hasn't seen it yet. If you ever see anything from me and it's actually written well, thank her. Those are the good guys of the Bible, though. Okay, what about Pharaoh in Genesis? Had a dream from God. What about Nebuchadnezzar in the book of Daniel? Had a vision from God. What about Pilate's wife? We don't know whether she was a good person or a bad person, but God came to her in a dream and said, you might want to tell Pilate to kind of back away from this whole situation. See, God talks to everybody. Even more, though, he talks to those of us who are listening and are tuned in and are going, hey, God, what do you have for me today? It's pretty important. So when we stop to consider that much of the Bible is vision or dream, it becomes clear that God does indeed do what he says. He speaks to people in dreams and visions. Can this happen to me? Maybe the bigger question is, do I want this to happen to me? Like I said when we started out, but what if God tells me something uncomfortable? Well, he's the great comforter. So if he does tell you something uncomfortable, he's standing right there to also give you comfort. What if God tells me something that takes me out of where I'm at and it moves me to somewhere else? Well, he's going to go with you, so it's going to be okay. It's all good because God's just not talking to you. He's just not giving you information like, look, I've got bad news for you. You go to your dentist, and dentists only do a small window of things in your teeth. If it's like a root canal, you have to go to somebody else, and if it's something else, you have to go to somebody else. But so your dentist calls you and he goes, "Man, I got bad news. You got a bad tooth there, and I can't do anything about it." That'll be $75, and thanks. See you next month. But see, God's not saying, "Look, there's something tough you're going to go through, but I am going through it with you. As a matter of fact, climb on board. I'm going to carry you through this, through the valley of the shadow of death." Yes, sometimes we do go through difficult things, but he goes through it with us. So that's pretty cool. So, how many of you have ever had this? I got the sense I should just go a different way. On my way to church this morning, on my way to work the other day, I just felt like I was supposed to go a different way. And then when I got to work, I realized that had I gone the other way, there was an accident and it was like shut down. Or, I got the feeling that I was supposed to go just talk to this person and go, "Hey, is everything okay today?" And then that person just opens up and just goes, "Man, I'm like dying here. Thank you for asking me." Alyssa was sitting on the back of a plane with her head down and reading a book. And God said, "You should be more sociable." And so she speaks to the guy that's sitting next to her. Come to find out, the families have known each other for years. How would she have known that unless God spoke to her? Has that happened to anybody? Anybody here go, "Yeah, I heard this still small voice. Turns out it was God." Wasn't that lucky? Wasn't it lucky that I just happened? No. So we have that happen. You say the perfect thing at the perfect time. It impacts someone in a powerful way. Man, aren't I great? Actually, it's like, man, isn't God great that he used me? So people can have good observation skills, absolutely. But for the Christian, I'd rather have God speaking truth to me about a situation than me just have good observation skills. I think I have fairly good observation skills. I'm what's known at my house as the finder. If somebody is looking for something they can't, I'll come over to the house and I will find that guitar pick. I will do that today. I'm the finder. It's like, hey, did you guys not look in the most obvious place? That's a squirrel. Don't worry. He loves this. He sits, he listens to the sermon. When he's had enough, he runs off. As many of you wish you could do. So anyways,